броня крепка, и танки наши быстрые, и наши люди мужества полны, в строю стоят.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have another War Thunder Devblog, and this is actually for the IL-28Sh. Now, a lot of people, when reading that name, will see it as familiar, and that's because we already have the IL-28 in-game. Now, the main difference between the IL-28 and the SH version that we have here, they are two separate aircraft. This isn't like a modification like the T-64BV or the Super Conqueror, but it is a completely different aircraft, and the reason for this is because of the ordnance that it brings to the table. The justification for doing this, I'll read it out here for you. The IL-28Sh will become available to all War Thunder pilots as a new attacker of the 5th rank of the Soviet aviation tree. Although some players might be confused once they first unlock their IL-28Sh to see the exact same plane in their hangar as the base model, fear not, your eyes are not deceiving you. Out of the box, both IL-28s are exactly the same. This is unsurprising at best when considering that the IL-28Sh is based off a standard IL-28 bomber. I'm getting really sick of saying that. Meaning that the machines share nigh identical design solutions. They're the same plane. However, once you take a closer look at the modifications tab on the SH, it is then at the very latest when you will realize that you're actually looking at a different aircraft. Contrary to the base model, the SH is, as the designation might hint at, an attacker. To fulfill this role, the Soviet engineers equipped the SH with 12 additional external pylons, which can carry a vast amount of secondary weapons, such as rocket pods, bombs, in addition to the payloads found in the internal bomb bay. Now, this is the main selling point of this aircraft. It is the fact that it is an attacker version, where the other one is very much a medium/light jet bomber version. So, the best thing to do when discussing it is therefore, instead of talking about its performance against other aircraft, it is much better to see it in the context of what it's going to be able to do in ground battles, and also against AI ground in air realistic. And when we talked about the FJ-4B, I also talked about this aircraft and the F4U7, and the reason for that is because we're getting 3 aircraft this update which have a hell of a lot of external weapons on them, or secondary armaments if you will. And one thing that hasn't been updated in a hell of a long time when it comes to War Thunder is the AI ground in air realistic. You can still pop them with one rocket if you have enough explosive mass in it, and because of that, you now have machines such as this baby here running around with 192 unguided missiles, meaning that they'll probably be able to wipe up a map within, let's say, about 2 minutes if there's 4 of these guys on a team. But obviously this is down, there's a little bit down to player skill here, but when you have 192 rockets, you can afford to miss a few. But overall, it really depends on how these rockets are modeled against the AI ground forces that they're going to find. If they're modeled to one-shot, one-kill, like a lot of rockets are in the game, then we're going to have some quite large issues with this IL-28 and also the FJ-4B. It's going to become a race to see who can outdo the other. Now, on the dev server, there was a few issues with the IL-28. First of all, it had the same BR as its predecessor, even though it is its predecessor with just better ordnance. Now, whether that should be a different BR or not, I think it does justify at least a 0.3 difference. So with the original IL-28 being an 8.0, I believe this thing should be 8.3. I don't think it should be 9.0 or anything like that, but 8.3 would satisfy me, because this is a straight upgrade. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, what about the bomb loads and the internal bombs and all of this? It doesn't matter. The secondary armaments on this are much better for whatever you want to do compared to the other IL-28. And because it's labeled as an attacker, it will still get a form of air spawn as the IL-28. Not as high of a one, or at least it shouldn't do, but at least it'll get one, meaning that it will be able to join the battle at speed, at altitude, making it become a vehicle which is going to be very quick to get to the battlefield and annihilate anything there in air realistic. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to flick over to this. Now, this is the video that I did, which was basically talking about the vehicles that I missed, and the IL-28Sh was one which I didn't do a full video on, but I did test it, and actually Bad Mofo and Dog for Life, who are both on the Discord, if you want to join us, they're both moderators over there. We were testing the killing power of stuff like HVARs and also these SSK rockets. As you can see, 150 millimeters of pen at 0 degrees, 129 and 74. So they're going to go through the majority of stuff at, if you're angling down and hitting them. What was kind of surprising about these rockets was that they didn't really drop at all. I was overshooting all the time with them, and the main reason for this was because they were flying in a straight line up to 1 kilometer. Even up to around 2 kilometers, there wasn't a lot of drop. After that, of course, there was a bit of a drop. But yeah, that is something to take into account. You may not be used to the fact that these rockets don't drop that much. But Mofo was in his Abrams, Dog was in his AMX-40, and we lined them up, and I just cannoned a ton of rockets at them. And the worst we could do is breach an Abrams and set some fires. These are AP rockets, 0.29 kilograms of explosive mass with a 344 grams of TNT equivalent. That is not a lot, but the issue is you have a ton of them, so eventually you're going to kill targets, and also against stuff like AA, it's going to be interesting to see how it does against AA, if it hull breaks them or not. If those don't work though, if the rockets end up not being that good, you have 6 S24s. Now these S24s are big mamba jumbas. You will see them in the Devblog itself. I'll try and show you. Yes, you see they're right here. These are not small rockets. These are designed to maim pretty much anything that they touch. A lot of explosive mass in them. So if you have anything that's going to get hull broken, or if you're very accurate with them, yes, you're going to annihilate tanks. So if you're struggling with the tons of rockets, it may be worth trying to test and move over to them. The cannons in themselves, you get 4 of them, 2 on each, just either side of the fuselage and the inner wing. One is kind of surprising about them. They have a higher fire rate and also a higher muzzle velocity than the standard NR23 guns that you will find in the nose. I personally don't like this. I don't like the fact when I have secondary guns which have different muzzle velocities, especially when it's a decent difference like these ones. I believe the guns are called the GSHs or the G2SHs, something like that. But yeah, it's for 23 millimeters. I don't know why you would take them over the other secondary weapons that you have, unless you were intent on trying to actually use this thing as a fighter. And then I'll just turn around and say, well, why don't you use one of the Russian or Soviet fighters? It's much easier to do for you. And also, the bomb loads are better than them, and also the rockets are better than them. So, the only time we'll see an IL-28Sh take these cannons are if they increase the penetration on them, because the penetration isn't that high, or for some reason they dick around with the flight model enough that it actually becomes a competent fighter. Because right now, if you haven't flown the IL-28, it's a big bird. It's easy to hit. The main survivability it has is its turret on the back of it. Now, that wasn't working on the IL-28Sh on the dev server, but that was a confirmed bug on the dev server, so it will be working once it hits live. So overall, it still has that defensibility, but what it doesn't have is the offensiveness against other aircraft. This thing is strictly going to be a ground attacker, whereas something like the FJ4B is going to be much more of a multi-purpose, which is going to help it out in the long run. Tons of different bomb loads, 12-100s, 8-250s, 10-250s, 4-500s, a 1500, and of course the Mamba Jamba, the 3000, to be able to annihilate anything in an area that you feel like. The main issue with this, as I said, in Air Realistic, is if it's able to mop up a map very quickly, and also the fact that in Ground Realistic, if it is able to get past the radar AA. The IL-28 in itself is not incredibly fast. It's also a big aircraft, and even though it does have really good secondary armaments which it can bring in to deal a lot of damage, the biggest issue is Gepards and Type 87s, and now the new Chieftain Marksman, the Vulcan. There's a lot of radar AA out there, and also the AMX-30 DCA. Or the AMX-30, I believe it's the DCA, but if not, you know which one I mean. All of these machines are designed to annihilate stuff like the IL-28Sh, large jets, which isn't as quick as other ones. It's not going to be able to get to the battlefield as quickly unless either there's none on the enemy team or, you stay low. Now, does that mean you won't see these? No, I think you'll see them in the same way you see stuff like AD4s right now, the F4U7 when that comes out, the FJ4B, and also this thing. You'll get people in light tanks charging at caps, capping them, getting shot or J'ing out, and getting in these things to try and get an advantage over the enemy team to be able to use those 192 rockets to really cause some damage. And I think it will be effective. It might be interesting to see if that part of the meta came back. It never really affected me that much. The only place it really affected me was when I was playing the Americans and the P-47 was incredibly prevalent. It still is, but that type of playstyle has either been, it's kind of dug its own grave, where if you see somebody doing it, I'm guessing people will report them, or it's just one of those things that has kind of fallen out of favor, kind of like a flavor of the month idea. So with these new aircraft, I think we're going to see it come back, because why wouldn't you? These aircraft are going to be really good as CAS in ground forces, and in Air Realistic, they're just going to tear up the ground. It's really going to be interesting to see if they do something about ground AI. They're going to have to, because people like me exist who will just, annihilate a whole column with this thing and not really think about it. Remember the HO229? The HO229, when it was released, had these HVAC belts, and it had them for a very long time. This was before the flight model was changed, so it was a lot less maneuverable as well. But with the 30mm it had, the MK103s, you could mop up a line of medium tanks incredibly quickly, and it meant that maps like Berlin, if you had 2 or 3 Hortons, you were able to finish it within 5 minutes. Well, think about that, but with IL-28s instead, with 192 rockets, killing pillboxes and killing tanks. So yeah, these types of vehicles may decide that, Gaijin may have to do something about the core mechanics of Air Realistic, because they're going to be pushing the boundaries, or at least they should be, unless something is done about them and the rockets themselves are nerfed into the ground. But overall, I'm happy to see this. It should be a fun little jet. Should it be its own, vehicle over the IL-28? Not exactly sure about that. I would personally put them together, but it's still something to grind out now for the Soviets for me, so at least there's that to look forward to. I don't think they're different enough, though, to have 2 separate models. But anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.